Hudson Valley, as you know, is just one of the faster growing places in our state for obvious reasons. It's a beautiful place to live. It has good educational institutions, both K through 12 and higher ed. It's near a very large city with all the amazing cultural and other types of opportunities, and has a good infrastructure. You put all that together, we're the kind of place that the next generation, if you will, would like to live and work. And so focusing on some job areas that have the potential to growth has real potential. And so I'm going to talk about a bunch, but the one I want to highlight first is actually waterfront development, because we can take what has been done already here, using our waterfront as a great attraction for tourists, both those who stay a long time and those who come up for a day, and it helps grow and build the economy. And you know, I know that some people say, well, that's kind of soft stuff. I learned a little lesson further north. When I first got to be senator, there was a great debate in Hudson, New York, in Columbia County. Is that your area, Mike, or no? No, that's slightly north of the area. But there was a great debate. A cement company wanted to build a huge cement plant with a large smokestack. I think it was in Athens. I don't remember where it was. And it would employ about 200-300 more people. And most of the union people and the blue-collar folks were strongly for that. But there was a large element in the community that said, no, we're on the verge of making Hudson a center for antiquing in the whole Northeast. And to most people, that sounded like a, oh, come on, that sounds like, okay. Well, the bottom line is, the people had a big fight as to which should prevail. And the antiquing group won. The cement plant was never built. The number of jobs, Hudson is booming because it has become the antiquing capital of not just the Hudson Valley, but really of the Northeast. And it's increased tourism and it's increased jobs. It's also increased the number of people who do other types of things who want to live there, because it's sort of a cool place to live. And it was a little lesson to me that you can do economic development in different kinds of ways, and it doesn't always mean building a factory with a lot of, you know, welding and machines pounding to create jobs. And so the first thing I want to focus on is waterfront walkway development, because it's a great opportunity. And from the northern part of the Hudson River in Kingston to the most southern part in Yonkers, there are proposals for smart, sustainable development on the banks of the Hudson River. Whether it's supporting projects financially, I've worked hard for that. For instance, we got the city of Kingston $1 million for new trolley rail, making sure federal bureaucracies don't hold up projects, like Peekskill wants to have a whole big waterfront development. It's just right for it, but the federal government and the Army Corps are putting all kinds of silly little barriers in their way. This is something that I've been trying to do. And the river is an amazing magnet for tourism, for residential development, for commercial development, and it's happening everywhere. You look at the waterfront, you know, even in a place like Newbern, which has had its share of trouble, the bright spot is the waterfront, which is growing and booming. And so we should regard the river as an economic development tool and try to think of ways to enhance it. And one of the ways to enhance it is to make sure that we can use the river for hiking, for biking, for all kinds of things. And if we had a contiguous network going all the way from Beacon to Cold Spring to do that, you'd attract people from around the world. And so that's what I am looking at and proposing today. We all know about the walkway over the Hudson. It was just a brilliant idea. You know, I give all that group, including my good friend Rob Dyson, tremendous credit. And in its first year alone, just to give you an example, and most of you know this, They expected they'd get about 300,000 tourists. They got 1 million. 1 million. That's amazing. And you know, when you looked at them, you know, a lot of them came from the New York City area or our local region, but lots of them came from much, much further. And it's created $60 million in local economic activity alone. It surpassed every goal. So by using the walkway as a model up and down the Hudson, we can bring real money and create real jobs in our local communities. And we shouldn't cut the mission short. Given the success of Walkway, we should think big and bold. So the same outdoor experience that people love on the walkway and the bike trails, and I had to work with the railroad company, the CSX, to help them deal with the easements and stuff like that so we could get bike trails connected. Well, that same experience, as I say, should be enhanced from Beacon and Dutchess to Cold Spring and Putnam. And so today, I'm announcing a push for a public access path that'll connect Beacon, Cold Spring, Phillipstown, and Fishkill. Here it is. Let's see here. This is, okay, it's in 2 parts.
Cold Spring.
Right.
This is the
Yep.
whole
Right, this is the top part, and here's Bannerman's Island, which has a great opportunity for tourism as well. And here's the whole thing. It's great. So I see, this is where the yellow meets the red. I see, okay. So you can see it, it's pretty obvious what should happen. The walkway in the area have been studied since the 80s. Everyone agrees a river walk connecting the lower Hudson is the answer. And so we've been trying to do it piece by piece. Individual towns, agencies, authorities try to deal with it. But I think what we ought to do is try and do it as a whole, as opposed to little bits here and little bits there. And that would involve bringing together New York State Parks, the MTA, Metro North, and DOT at both the state and federal levels together in an idea to create one plan. And the bulk of improvements would be from Breakneck to Stony Point, using mountains, trails, river, and natural beauty of the Hudson to spur economic development and turn our tourist destinations into a regional economic engine. We've been working on a number of things, including Bannerman Castle, the Fishkill Depot, which is the greatest burial ground for Revolutionary War soldiers other than Valley Forge, and was crucial in our history, and people are interested in that. But we also can think outside the box. In Peekskill, Poughkeepsie, or right here on the western bank, developments of waterfronts up and down the Hudson present a unique opportunity for businesses, developers, environmental organizations like Scenic Hudson to work with one another on revitalizing a historic part of the historic Hudson Valley. So that's what we're going to try to do there, and I know that Mike, we've talked to Mike a little bit about this, and he's going to work with us on it, and it's one way to really improve jobs here in the Hudson Valley. Let me talk about a few other areas that you're a little familiar with, but again, that we should focus on in terms of jobs. Food and beverages. That's a tremendous opportunity here for us because we have so many things. The best way to grow the food and beverage industry is by creating sort of a soup to nuts solution, like a little macro solution on this walkway. We could have a macro solution on food and beverage, from the farm to the restaurant, or from the farm to the kitchen table. And what we want to do is allow our farmers to sell to CIA-trained chefs and larger manufacturers like Kraft and Dannon. And then we want CIA chefs and people like Kraft and Dannon to be able to sell all over the place. They know how to do that. We want to put Putnam County grown produce. We want it to end up in the Dannon plant, where we'll end up in shelves across the country, or it'll end up on dinner plates in the finest restaurants of Manhattan. So this sounds like a no-brainer, but it takes a lot of work. And this February, I participated in the launch of a new Hudson Valley Food and Beverage Alliance created by Mike and HVEDC. It's designed to help with organic business growth and help attract new companies and investment to the region. Just think of how fast this industry cluster is growing. Here are some of the companies we have here. PepsiCo, Dannon, Heineken, Sabra Dipping, Pernod Ricard, and then we have local specialty businesses, Crown Maple, who I mentioned. We have Captain Lawrence Brewing, we have Continental Organics, we have Bread Alone and Peekskill Brewing Company. Dannon invested, they looked around and they invested their $9 million state-of-the-art research and discovery center in Westchester. They could have done it anywhere in the world, but they chose us for two reasons: a talented workforce and access to the greatest food market in the world, which is New York City. They want to be nearby. In another example, Sean Eldridge right here, and the Hudson Valley River Ventures are using private funds to invest in local startups. And they've expanded companies in Westchester like Peekskill Brewing. It's a great place. Right here in Ulster with companies like Bread Alone. And Sean is one of the newest members of HVEDC, really is passionate about this. I've talked to him. We have over 5,000 food and beverage companies with over 50,000 workers in this sector. We have 68 million customers within a 6-hour drive. So we should do that. And now I'm also supporting a new food and beverage cluster center with the CIA in Dutchess County to serve the Hudson Valley. I've asked the Economic Development Association to fund this project with federal funding to make this center an epicenter of business activity for the Food and Beverage Alliance. I'm really excited about this. It can really make things grow. And I've gotten EDA to put aside about $40 million for flood-damaged areas in New York. And we're a flood-damaged area, as you remember. And so one of our top goals is to get EDA to fund this project at the CIA. And the CIA will coordinate with our farmers in terms of what the chefs want. In other words, there are new products. Some of them are there's great growth in organic, but there's also new kinds of products that could grow here that our farmers aren't producing, and link them up as well, since they have such a network of chefs, to restaurants in the New York area and around the country. And so that makes a great deal of sense. And there's I visited another example of sort of the food industry working when I visited one in Greene County and I think one in Columbia County, but 2 fish farms. This is great. Again, the proximity to New York City helped. If you order a Bronzino at a restaurant in New York City, it always had to be flown in to be fresh that day from Italy or wherever Bronzino are from. I think it sounds like they're from Italy, but somewhere in Europe in the Mediterranean. That's expensive. Well, they in these huge fish pools, fish tanks, are growing the Bronzino, or raising, I don't know what you do with the Bronzino. Grow? Raise? No, because they don't eat them. The other people eat them. But anyway, they're swimming around in these fish tanks, and they sell them to New York City restaurants. It's booming. So these are the kinds of examples of things that we can do in terms of the food industry. Crown Maple is a great example, and we're going to have a world-class product known around the world and help pinpoint the Hudson Valley as a center of high-end food industry. We're working right now in the Farm Bill to increase the ability of our maple syrup producers in New York State to tap other trees. I think you're getting short of trees, right? There's such a demand for the product. Always looking for trees. And so this will be helpful, as well as ways to market and do things like that. But the Maple Tap Act, it's amazing. We have more maple trees than Quebec, but we produce about 1/5 of the maple syrup. And we can produce the best stuff. So these are things we're trying to do to encourage it, and I want to thank Rob and Crown for doing that. Now here's another thing that's happening. We passed a law, I was instrumental in passing it, called the Brand USA. Brand USA advertises New York products, but also New York destinations around the world. Other countries do a much better job of attracting tourists from our country than we do at attracting tourists here. But this particularly works for the Hudson Valley because people who come to New York City don't realize that just a stone's throw away is great opportunities, and a lot of them are outdoor opportunities, which these people love. They love to take a day trip or maybe even longer to find the walkway of the Hudson, or eventually to go on one of the foot trails along the beautiful Hudson River, which they have heard about. So what Brand USA does is it's paid for by our hotel and tourism industry and the federal government. It's a one-to-one match. It's already on the books. They do advertising. It's a private-public partnership between the travel industry and the U.S. Commerce Department. And it creates the type of partnerships such as we have here in the Hudson Valley to help our industries grow. One of the things we're thinking of doing is trying to get them to pay for billboards at JFK Airport that advertise the Hudson Valley. Things like that, simple little things like that could make a big difference. We also we could leverage the millions of international tourists who go one place in the Hudson Valley. You know where they go? Woodbury. Exactly, they go to Woodbury Commons. Well, why shouldn't they know that there are so many other things, and maybe instead of just getting on a bus, going to Woodbury Common and come home, they should stay overnight? I know when my wife and I and kids have traveled to a big city in Europe, we like to take a day trip somewhere outside. Well, we don't do that in New York, and we're ripe for this type of activity, so that's what we're using that for. So, tourism, the Hudson food and beverage, and using the Hudson River for these things is a great example. Another thing we're sort of moving along on, of course, is biotechnology. I'm not going to get into all the details, but New York Medical College, we just got them $400,000 to take existing space and turn it into a training center. Because a lot of our biotech companies, the Regenerons of the world, and there are many smaller ones, don't have the workforce they need. And it's not just engineers, but it's people at sort of the next level. We have a real gap in American education that way. And so they would train them over at New York Medical College. Biotech has a huge potential in the Hudson Valley. Huge potential. Because again, the kind of people who do biotech, whether they be engineers or biochemists, like to live here. They really like to live here. And we have a few areas where we are way ahead of everybody else. There's going to be breakthroughs in vaccines. We do vaccines here. And that's an area that we should focus on and help develop. And we are now trying to get Department of Defense. Why Department of Defense? To help us with biotech. They do have a biotech program because, like as Willie Sutton said, that's where the money is. And we're trying to get them to come to New York Medical College and our local biotech companies and do some of the funding that they do. They fund a lot of biotech to keep their soldiers healthy, but it's a great opportunity for us that we haven't tapped. Two other things we're trying to do is get help the biotech incubator for advanced research at New York Medical College. They expect that that will create 140 full-time jobs and 75 part-time jobs. That makes a great deal of sense. We are also working with Pfizer to try, and I just spoke to Ian Reed, who's the head of Pfizer. I met with him and Sally Sussman, and to try and take the facility. They're keeping a lot of the research over there, but not the manufacturing over in Rockland County, and to see that it is sold to somebody who could grow biotech. And you know, it has all these pipes and all kinds of different stuff. So to just make it into some residential thing doesn't make sense when this could be a real job generator and job creator at a time when we're looking to do all of this. So that's another example. Now I have a few more. I just met with Frank Murray, President Murray of Marist, in terms of having IBM as collaborate. Someone here from IBM? Just want to compliment. IBM is just a great community resource, and they really care about the Hudson Valley. I've met now with Ms. Romedy, the new head, and proud that we have one of the leading women CEOs in America right here in the Hudson Valley. I was good friends with Sam Palmisano before that, and they always, you know, here's an interesting thing. 1/4 of their U.S. employees are in New York State. Is that amazing? That says something about their commitment to New York. Anyway, they are working with Marist to create a cloud computing center so that small businesses can use cloud computing. It's too expensive for lots of small businesses to use some of the things that larger companies can use in terms of computing, but a cloud, of course, lets everybody use it and makes the cost a lot lower. And again, we're looking at DOD and NSF to help fund that. IBM will help too. And that will be a great opportunity and could start off a whole new bunch of businesses here in the Hudson Valley. So we have great opportunities. We have a great workforce, a great lifestyle, a great place to live. And I believe by thinking a little bit ahead of the curve, by collaborating, by working together, public-private, let's not isolate things by towns and villages, but have a whole Hudson-wide Valley approach, we can ensure that job growth in the Hudson Valley continues to be robust in the next 50 years the way it has been in the last 50 years, and I look forward to working with